Think of all the mature, responsible things you could be doing. Helping old ladies cross the street, proudly maintaining your yard, hanging with your folks, or cleaning your room. But get real, you'd rather be playing video games. You can rent them from Blockbuster.
I want to take you on a journey into the far-flung past of 2001, before the days of battle passes and predatory microtransactions, to the era of the PlayStation 2. I was a child perusing the local Blockbuster looking for a game to rent. I marched down the PlayStation 2 aisle, unsure of what I was looking for. I finally pick up a game with a cool-looking main character and what I thought was his pet. This game was Jak and Daxter, the Precursor's Legacy. Naughty Dog, yes, that Naughty Dog, was founded by Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin while they were still in high school. At this time, the studio was formerly known as Jam Software. What a terrible name. The first game they ever released was a title called Math Jam in 1985. Thrilling, I know, a game about math. It wouldn't be until September of 1989 that Rubin and Gavin decided to rebrand Jam Software into Naughty Dog. At this point, the duo were starting to pick up traction in the gaming industry, which ultimately led to them partnering with EA for their publishing needs. However, in 1994, after a slew of games developed under their belts, they expanded and hired cartoonist Charles Zembillas. I'm going to let you guys decide what this is, and Joe Pearson, which ultimately led to the creation of one of the most influential games of the late 20th, early 21st century, Crash Bandicoot. At this point, the game was shown to Sony Computer Entertainment, who signed on to publish the game. This ended up becoming one of the most highest selling titles for the PlayStation console, selling over 6.8 million copies. That was a huge number for the late 90s. I also played and loved Crash Bandicoot, but that's another topic for another video, of course. After the success of Crash Bandicoot, in 2001, Sony officially bought Naughty Dog and made them one of their go-to studios. Now, you would think, after the success of Crash Bandicoot and all these other titles they had under their belts, why even seek a buyer? Why would they even entertain the idea of Sony purchasing them and them losing creative control slightly? Well, it was due to the developing cost of AAA games. They had ballooned tremendously over the years. From a humble $50,000 for their earlier games as Jam Studios to $1.5 million for Crash Bandicoot alone. That's a lot of money, especially in the 90s. I mean, that's a lot of money now, but the 90s, that's a lot of money. And now we come to the point of this video. The first game Naughty Dog developed under Sony was Jak and Daxter, the Precursor's Legacy. Before we move on to the actual game, I just wanted to state how much I love these games. To be honest, I hadn't replayed the first one since I was a kid due to how much the series ended up changing in the sequels. But going back and playing the PS5 port unlocked some childhood memories that I had clearly forgotten. This is a good game. A simpler game, but maybe that's for the better. I forgot how good it is, and it's a shame I was so enamored by Jak 2 and 3 that I never went back to experience the original. But I digress. Let's get into the story of Jak and Daxter. Oh, and just on a side note, my intention of this playthrough was to 100% the game, since I remembered there being a secret ending I never saw when the game first launched 25 years ago. God, I'm getting old. Spoiler warning, the secret ending was not worth the headache of going around collecting everything, but we will get into that later. The game opens with narration from the Green Eco Sage, Samos. As he finishes his opening spiel about destiny and whatnot, we are introduced to the titular Jak and Daxter on a boat to Misty Isle. Looking back, this may have been my first introduction to the silent protagonist, as it were. It's especially noticeable in this game due to Daxter's constant, and I mean constant, yapping. He acts as the voice for both characters through this entire first entry. As Jak and Daxter arrive on Misty Isle, they sneak around the island and ultimately come upon a group of lurkers, which are going to be the enemies throughout this game. Why they called them lurkers, I don't know. But anyway, The lurkers are having a meeting with their mysterious leaders. More on them later. The next scene, we are introduced to the concept of eco in this game, specifically dark eco. While Jak and Daxter are having a one-sided conversation about precursor artifacts and whatnot, Daxter inadvertently falls into a vat of dark eco, drastically transforming him to something resembling something between an otter and a weasel. I think they call it an otzel in this game. Spoiler alert, he will remain as this animal throughout the entire series. After arriving back at their home village, Jak and Daxter meet up with Samos, who berates Daxter, falling into a vat of dark eco. Samos tells Daxter that he can't help him, even if he wanted to, because the only person well-versed enough in dark eco is the sage Gal Acheron, a hermit who lives in the far north. Samos also reveals that there are other sages in the world, but none of them have turned on their teleporter gates for a while, so their status is a mystery to him. This brings the game to its first roadblock. In order to move the story forward, Jak has to cross through the Fire Canyon, which is too hot to cross on foot. This is when the game introduces Samos' daughter, Kira, into the mix. She informs them that they could cross the canyon on something called the Zoomer, but it requires 20 power cells to maintain its heat-resistant shield. She informs the duo that they can acquire these power cells from helping the local villagers, which are a colorful group of individuals. Before Samos allows Jak and Daxter to go on their adventure, he wants them to go through what he calls training. This is where the game introduces the tutorial level, if you will. It is a standard tutorial with Samos narrating how to attack, jump, collect things, blah blah blah, you get the point. You also collect your first couple of power cells here. The way the power cells are placed across each map with various different side objectives to complete them reminded me of like Super Mario 64's star system, where you would enter into a map and there would be different objectives to kind of collect each star. A little less rigid, where in Super Mario 64, you would collect a star, and it would kick you back out of the painting, you have to jump back in, yada, yada, yada. You don't have to deal with any of that. It was at this moment, though, a lot of memories came flooding back to me. For a game that is 25 years old, the movement is slick and responsive. I just had forgotten how much fun this game is. One of my favorite movement abilities to use in this series is Jak's roll and jump. This is a move that has a multifaceted use. Use it to reposition yourself in combat, or to reach a platform that is just a little too far for a normal double jump. I will point out though, and I noticed this throughout all the main Jak games, Jak's double jump feels a tad unresponsive at times, leading me to fall to my deaths a couple of times. You really have to commit to the double jump, as it can't be staggered out like some other games. A la Elden Ring, what is the horse's name? Torrent's double jump. Speaking of the double jump, the way the platforming moves can be comboed into each other is a really fun and intuitive mechanic. For example, the double jump can be comboed with the circle spin move to allow for more hang time in the air. I found myself doing this for almost every jump to ensure I would land safely, using Jak's shadow as a means of measuring where I'm going to land. After my long-winded rant about mechanics and whatnot, let's get back to the story. Heading out of the hut into the village, Jak and Daxter meet their first villager, the local mayor. He tasks them with finding a way to restore power to the village's windmill. Not because it's crucial for everyone in the village to have power, but because he's worried about losing his re-election campaign. The comparisons to real-life politicians write themselves. He also lets them know if they wanted to make a sizable donation to his campaign, he could provide them with another power cell. He wants 90 precursor orbs, a collectible that acts as sort of a currency, if you will, throughout the game. This 90 number will pop out a lot throughout the game. Any new NPCs you meet, 90 precursor orbs for a power cell, please. There's even an NPC that requires you to give him 90 precursor orbs 4 times to acquire all the power cells he has. I get it. Consistency is good, but come on. There couldn't be any sort of, growing number or shrinking number, or it's just 90 straight across the board all the way through. You also meet other villagers that want you to do various tasks like herd some yaks, goats, I don't know, whatever these things are. Eventually you meet the local artist who wants you to find his muse. It's like a cat kind of thing. I don't know. You'll see it later on. After you're done meeting the local villagers, this game allows you to explore where you want to go next. You can either go down to the beach or move on to the Precursor Temple to open the blue eco vents across the rest of the game. Either way, you are stuck in this beginning area until you collect 20 power cells. This goal can be accomplished without having to 100% the areas, but I did it anyway because it was quick, and my goal is to 100% the whole game. I found this opening sequence of the game to be charming, full of nostalgia. It always reminded me of a better time in gaming when things were kept simple, not so reliant on high fidelities, or open worlds so bloated it's impossible to see all of it. I will say though, some of the character models in this game are kind of crazy looking. Their strange, smooth textures paired with over-exaggerated movements really left me feeling odd at times. I know it was a product of the times, but you can really feel early game development in some of these animations. This Muse quest brings you back to Misty Island, where you can freely explore now. It's a short level, as are most in this first game. Completing this level grants you a power cell and your first access to riding the Zoomer. To be honest, I kind of hate the Zoomer. There's gonna be a common thread throughout this whole video of how much I fucking hate the Zoomer. But anyway, back to the story. I'll tell you why real quick. I kind of hate how the Zoomer handles. It's awkward. It turns like a boat for something resembling a motorcycle. It just doesn't make any sense. While exploring the Forbidden Temple, we are introduced to our first boss of the series, the Dark Eco Plant. A simple boss that ultimately leads to unlocking the blue eco vents. These blue eco vents will allow you to access previously inaccessible routes to find more power cells. God, there are so many power cells in this game. Finally, after collecting 20 power cells, you can attempt to cross the fire canyon. This is where I really started to dislike the Zoomer minigames and handling. Basically, as you are crossing the canyon, you have to keep an eye on the shield meter in the bottom right corner of the screen. Let it get too high, and it's an instant death, which brings you back to the beginning of the canyon. You can decrease the meter by running into these giant blue water balloons, but this is where I found it to be the most frustrating. The movement physics on the Zoomer are just terrible. A lot of PS2 games are like this, where minor adjustments on the stick overshoot or undershoot your target destination, and my guess as to why this is happening is because of the finer tuning of dead zones in modern controllers. Part of playing older games is learning to retrain your brain on how movement used to be handled on those antiquated controllers. Anyway, after a couple of frustrating runs, you get to the other side of Fire Canyon and are introduced to our second hub area, Rock Village. As you enter the Blue Eco Sage's hut, the environment storytelling is prevalent. The hut looks like it's been ransacked, and clearly some sort of fight went down. Books are strewn across the floor, barrels have been tipped over, pictures are skewed at odd angles. Hitting the teleporter button triggers a cutscene, which allows Samos and Kira to jump through, which Samos immediately points out the previously mentioned destruction. Kira looks out the window and realizes that Rock Village is currently under attack from a giant lurker, I think? He's throwing giant flaming rocks that are destroying the village. Kira also points out the next obstacle in our way of progression. The Blue Sage was working on a machine to levitate something. Point being, we are going to need 45 more power cells to power this machine to move on in our quest. As we explore Rock Village, we can see the top of a giant precursor tower sticking out of the water, which leads us to one of my favorite stages of this game, the Lost Precursor City. As we go down the elevator, we are greeted by this level's environment. It is an underwater city that kind of reminds me of a much less perilous Rapture from BioShock. As we explore, we enter into a big open room with switches that unlock various rewards. The reason I bring this room up is because I want to briefly talk about the floating platform section. Normally, I hate floating platforms. They slow down the pacing of most games without any real gain for player enjoyment. However, I really like the way it's handled here. As you jump on the first circular platform, and I'll create a little diagram because I know some of you are going to be visual learners, another one will spin around it, allowing you to make your own path forward as the platforms will stop spinning when you jump off. Something about this made my smooth brain fire just the correct number of neurons that I really enjoyed it. It may seem simple, but in a game full of platforming with terrible camera angles, this was a highlight. As this stage was a highlight of the game, Rock Village also has a stage attached to it that I found to be one of the low points, Precursor's Basin. Precursor's Basin is a Zoomer exclusive level. I don't like that very much. As stated before, I dislike the Zoomer due to its floaty controls. This level made me hate the Zoomer parts. Having to chase around the flying lurkers almost made me want to turn off the game and never pick it up again. Much more annoying were the rings you have to drive through. Luckily, this game is very forgiving on the time crunch, but it's still just not enjoyable. To me. It's not enjoyable to me. I understand that some people may enjoy this part or whatnot, but I just found it to be frustrating. The Zoomer just sucks. It's just bad. Anyway, hitting up the boggy swamp stage, which is just an okay level, so I won't cover it in a lot of detail. I will say this, though. This is the first time we're introduced to a new form of eco called Orange Eco. This allows us to shoot fireballs from our hands with the punch mechanic. These fireballs can also be manually aimed by pressing the triangle button to enter a first-person mode. Jak becomes stationary while in this mode, and the camera sensitivity is really wonky. It's a good thing the auto-lock is pretty good in this game when you're outside of first-person mode, because if I had to use the first-person mode more often, I would have pulled my hair out in frustration. I activated the Blue Sage's machine and moved up to the first real boss of the game, Claw. As we make our way up to Claw, we are dropped into this vertical arena. Claw stands at the end, shoots his flaming boulders at us as we jump in between these three platforms to avoid getting hit. After a certain number of boulders hit the platforms, a blue eco particle appears at the last platform hit, which we collect to build the bridge towards Claw. As we are crossing the bridge, Claw will attempt to roll boulders down it to knock us off or injure us. Playing this boss really brought me back to bosses in Crash Bandicoot, and you can feel Naughty Dog's early influence from those games. Anyway, as you reach the end of the bridge, there's an orange eco pickup. As you pick up the orange eco, you have to mash the punch button, which is where, thank God, the automatic locking system for the outside of first person is good, because this would be extremely frustrating if we had to do it in first person. You have to mash the punch button while Claw is creating a huge boulder to throw at you. Hit Claw enough times and he drops the boulder on himself, which sends it flying towards the bridge. At this point, you have to run back to the beginning 3 platforms, do the process all over again. Rule of 3, of course, in all video games, you have to do this 3 times. After Claw is defeated, you gain access to another Zoomer level. While this time you don't have to worry about the lava overheating your Zoomer, the stage has a lot more gaps to fall through. There is also the added difficulty of racing these 3 flying lurkers to the end before they ignite some explosive that cause an instant game over, but I actually didn't find that part of this to be too difficult. As long as you hit some of the blue eco spots, you can easily beat them to the end. It's the goddamn holes in the ground that are the fucking problem. I died numerous times. Mainly because I was trying to collect all the precursor orbs and scout flies instead of finishing the stage first, which, looking back, and even at the time, I knew I would have had an easier time if I just finished the stage first and then backtracked. But like I said earlier in this video, Smooth Brain Guy takes path of most resistance every time. The biggest kicker of it all is that I couldn't even really complete the area until I unlocked the orange eco vents in an area after the canyon and had to backtrack anyway. It was definitely a monkey brain moment. Anyway, after throwing my head at the wall multiple times, I finally reached the end of the canyon and was able to move on to the Red Sage's hut in the next hub area, the volcanic crater. As we approach the Red Sage's hut, we notice it's in similar shape as the Blue Sage's. It looks like a fight went down. This is where we are formally introduced to the antagonist of this game, Gol and Maya Acheron, a brother and sister duo that have been completely corrupted by Dark Eco. Gol and Samos have a quick back and forth about the latter warning the former about the dangers of Dark Eco, but it all seems to fall on deaf ears. Gol reveals that they have access to a limited amount of Dark Eco since most of it is buried underneath the surface. This is where they reveal their plan is to open the silos of Dark Eco that would have given them full access. After Gol and Maya leave, Samos tells the group that if their plan comes to fruition, the Dark Eco would twist and destroy everything on the surface. Kira reveals that the only way forward to the next area is, of course, because of course it is, collect more power cells to ride the stupid Zoomer across a perilously hot canyon. Yay! The volcanic crater hub zone is connected to the Snowy Mountain and Spider Cave stages, which both I found to be well-designed areas. Snowy Mountain offers a completely different biome shift from what we've experienced so far, with it being a snowy area that causes Jak to walk slower, which I found to be a nice realistic touch. This is where we can also unlock the orange eco vents that allow us to backtrack on the previously stated and hated zoomer path to collect the last precursor orbs and power cell. There is also a section in the stage that requires you to ride a stupid bird creature in a timed platforming section that was, of course, moderately frustrating. I forgot how much platforming is in this game, but I guess that's kind of on me because this is a platformer. Now, moving on to the Spider Cave. I, ironically enough, consider this to be one of the best stages in the game. It is built with a lot of verticality, which challenges the player with a lot of ironically mentioned platforming sections. The first part of this stage is straightforward enough. Jump around the area to use orange eco vents to destroy the centipede-looking lurkers on the wooden pillars strewn throughout the level. The second part of this stage is exclusively a platforming section with platforms that drop out from under you and enemies trying to knock you off. I, ironically enough once again, really enjoyed this part. It is a straightforward test/mastery of Jak's movement abilities instead of relying on the floaty controls of the zoomer or the stupid bird. There is also a literal cave that endlessly spawns little spiders as you make your way to the other end to collect a power cell. This part is made easier if you unlock the orange eco vents before going through the spider cave, but of course, I didn't do that. I did it the opposite way. I saw the power cell at the end of the cave and just brute forced my way through, only to realize at the end of the stage that I needed the orange eco vents anyway to destroy the 2 boxes that were containing the last 12 precursor orbs for the stage. So, after unlocking the orange eco vent, I came back just for those 2 stupid boxes. Finally, after collecting all I needed from these stages, I was ready to move on to the lava tube. Another zoomer section. Why do they gotta put so many in this game? And I know that like Jak 2, like they have like zoomers and stuff, and it's like, you know, it's more like a Grand Theft Auto, but there's just something about these zoomer sections that I found to be a really low point of this first game. And I know it's just maybe because it's an older game and it's just a sign of the times, but like, man, I just really did not like these zoomer sections. Anyway, tangent over, back to the video. Here we are again, at another zoomer section. I swear they just put these in to piss off the players, but I have committed this far, might as well go all the way. So I died a lot here, again, because I was obsessed with trying to 100% the whole area in one run because, like I said before, I have smooth monkey brain that can't back down from a self-imposed challenge. I will say though, out of all the zoomer levels, I did have the most fun playing this one. There was no race this time, but it is in another lava section, which I found to be much more manageable. I don't know if it's because I'd finally gotten used to the zoomer controls, or if the game was more forgiving in terms of providing more water balloons to cool down the shield, but it just felt better. There was even a little mini-boss section in the middle of the track that required you to use orange eco to shoot these spinning spheres in the middle of the arena to unlock the next section of track. The next part of the track, though, was closer to the previous zoomer sections in frustration. Eventually, after crossing through the middle section, you have to essentially platform the zoomer across narrow pathways with no railings on them to reach the end. Once again, I found this to be easier than previous zoomer tracks, but I still felt those twinges of rage every time I slid off the track and had to be brought back to my checkpoint. That is another thing about this track that is different from previous ones. There are multiple checkpoints throughout the course that are quite generous, actually. It's almost like the devs knew that if players had to start at the beginning of the track every time they died, no one was going to finish this. After barely making my way to the end, we are left at the steps in the final area of the game, the Citadel. Honestly, I found this part to be just okay, I guess, but we'll get into that later. As you enter the Citadel, you are informed by our antagonist that they have captured Samos, and plan on using the energy from the 3 sages to power the robot or something, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, this is an area that is supposed to test the culmination of your skill that you have built up to this point. There are so many platform sections that I was pretty done by the end of it. After saving all 4 sages, you are left to confront our villainous duo at the top of the tower of the Citadel. Quick tangent, I had meticulously made sure, or at least thought I did, that I would have all the collectibles by the time I hit the elevator. And of course, I was one scout fly short in the final area of the Citadel. I knew it was in the Citadel, so I jumped on one of the spinning platforms on top of the level and used the first person function to try and spot the final scout fly. Only to realize that it was at the very beginning of the stage, right as you enter, and you had to just look right. And of course, smooth brain guy over here didn't do that. I made my way back down to collect the final fly and quickly returned to the elevator. I was kind of disappointed with the Citadel, to be honest. I really wanted them to expand the platforming sections to include a little more applications of the different colored ecos. It just felt like every section was a blue eco jumping puzzle that didn't really feel great to me. There's a room with infinitely spawning enemies that, you would use the red eco and the yellow eco, but it just felt more tedious than really enjoyable. I don't know. It just didn't feel good. As our titular heroes are ascending the elevator, Daxter is not exactly thrilled at the idea they have to destroy Gaul, who seems to be the only person who can help him turn back into his normal form. He eventually agrees that this is the right thing to do, though, which shows, ironically enough, some character growth for him. As you enter the arena for the final boss, you can see Gaul and Maya flying around in this giant precursor robot that they have made modifications to. They are attempting to open the dark eco silo, so you rush over there to try and stop them. First stage of this fight is pretty straightforward. Pick up the orange eco, spam punch, disable one of the boss's mechanics, and use the blue eco jump to escape an instant death AoE. The second phase gets a little more interesting, as the silo starts to open, creating a pitfall in the middle of the arena that instantly kills you. Gaul and Maya are also able to summon these dark eco beasts that are immune to regular damage, challenging the player to platform across the opening to collect orange eco to do damage while dodging any attacks along the way. Do this 3 times, boom, he's done. This boss fight was a great culmination of all the eco power boost you could get, while having enough of a challenge to feel like a final boss, but not too frustrating. They really dialed it in for this one. As Jak and Daxter are making their way back to the platform to meet up with their friends, they do a jig, which is honestly pretty well animated for a game from 2001. I am going to jump back to 2001 for a second and talk about the secret ending. I remember being a kid and beating this game and getting to this door that they show at the end and not understanding why it didn't open. I was either too stupid, probably, or too young that I apparently didn't catch that I had to collect all the power cells and precursor orbs and whatnot. Then, tragedy struck. I had to return the game to Blockbuster. I know, it was terrible. Only did I find out later from my friends at school that's why the door never opened for me. So, I was determined, 25 years later, to find out what was behind this door, only to be completely and utterly bamboozled by this bullshit scene. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I know it sounds like I'm poo-pooing this game a lot by the end, but I ultimately think my gripes with it can be attributed to it being a 25-year-old game. I will say, though, it held up surprisingly well at times. I thought coming back to it I was going to be bored, or my brain rot had gotten so bad that I couldn't enjoy something if it didn't have endless content to absorb. But I was pleasantly surprised at how much fun I was having at some points. I remember when this game came out, though, and it was way ahead of its time. It took that formula developed from Crash Bandicoot and created essentially an open world game, albeit a primitive one, but still. I can overlook the flaws of the floaty zoomer controls and terrible camera angles all just because it's so damn charming. I think modern developers could learn a thing or two from just going back and playing some older games. Maybe it'll help them realize why people who game, or have been gaming for a long time, fell in love with the hobby so much. It was because of games like this, or Ratchet and Clank, or enter whatever video game insert did it for you. I think one of the ultimate lessons we can take from this game is that sometimes less is more. Modern games are so bloated, so hyper-fixated on fidelity that the soul is just gone. It was traded for shadowy boardroom execs and private equity buyouts. We have to choose as the consumer to stop buying to the evisceration of gaming as an industry. Support indies and AA games. Thanks for watching.